Hello and welcome to our daily Devo for June the 28th today. It's a Wednesday, and this is our 18th and final day in Jerusalem. Looks like we're going to an archaeological museum, the Wohl. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Wohl, Wohl, Archaeological Museum. He references John 18:15 through 18, as well as verses 25 through 27 in that chapter. Verse 16 is the one that starts off our lesson here, our Devo, but Peter had to wait outside at the door. The luxurious homes preserved in the Wohl Archaeological Museum give us a look into the lives of the Sadducees, Jerusalem's aristocratic priests. But they also illustrate the way in which first century social and architectural settings contributed to Peter's denials of Jesus. After Jesus' arrest, Peter and John followed behind until they arrived at the home of Caiaphas. Peter had to wait outside. Unlike John, he was not known by the household staff. In time, John secured Peter's entry to the house, but it seems the two became separated because John's name does not reappear in the story of Peter's denials. Alone in an unfamiliar setting, Peter quickly found himself immersed in a social and architectural nightmare. Peter made two miscalculations about the social context. First, he presumed anonymity, but his identity as a Galilean was easily recognized by his rough mannerisms and his distinctive accent. We read about that in Matthew 26:73. This connected Peter to Jesus, but it did not reveal him to be part of Jesus' inner circle. Then Peter stepped closer to the fire to warm himself. The flickering flames illuminated his face enough so that he was recognized by a relative of Malchus, the man whose ear Peter had cut off when Jesus was arrested, John 18:10. This person had seen Peter with Jesus in the garden. Peter was outed. What Peter does next is influenced in part by the home's architecture. We get a sense of what that house was like by visiting the Wohl Archaeological Museum, which preserves palatial first century homes from Jerusalem's upper city. These were the homes in which Israel's religious elite lived. We cannot be certain that one of these was the house of Caiaphas, but we can be certain that Caiaphas lived in a house like this. So let's look around and set our story in this kind of house. The home of Caiaphas sprawled much like the museum's largest home, which has an area topping 6,000 square feet. Like the Wohl homes, it was ornate with mosaic tile floors and walls painted with frescoes that simulated marble with floral motifs. The home of Caiaphas was also complicated. The Wohl villas have reception halls, private bathrooms, dining areas, and bedrooms all connected by a maze of hallways. And at the heart of all these rooms was an open-air courtyard where a fire could be built. We don't see Peter wandering the hallways of Caiaphas' house, but standing in such a courtyard warming himself by the fire. I suspect Peter looked for a way out once people began to recognize him, and I can only imagine how panicked and trapped he felt in this web of unfamiliar passageways. At that point, his denials multiplied. Being in an unfamiliar place where he was unknown doesn't excuse Peter's denials. But by entering the house of Caiaphas, Peter put himself, in a social and architectural text that left him vulnerable. And that serves as a powerful reminder to us. We cannot control when temptations come, but we can avoid settings in which temptations are harder to manage. We're all weak, I think. I think we're comfortable in some settings. We feel confident in those settings. But other times we get put in settings that are not known to us. We're not comfortable in them. I know in a big fancy mansion with powerful people around who might not be friendly. Picture yourself there. Picture yourself being called into the boss's office because you've been talking about Jesus. Your job is on the line. Picture yourself someplace where nobody else is a Christian and they're anti-Christian and they begin to question you. Pressure. Pressure. I think maybe our author wants us to go easy on Peter, and I certainly am willing to do that. But also just this reminder, don't go into places, into situations where the pressure may be too much to handle, where the temptations may be difficult. Because like Peter and others, we may not be as confident as we think we are. Lean on the Lord. 2 questions today. When have you found yourself in a context that made it more difficult for you to handle a temptation? You know what? Maybe it's somebody whose opinion we greatly value, and they're asking us questions that we're fearful if we answer them a certain way, their opinion will drop of us. I don't know. I can imagine all kinds of different scenarios, but certainly being where Peter was would be difficult. Second question, how does Peter's decision to enter the home impact how you think about your relationship of physical and social context to temptation in your own life? There's all kinds of places where temptations crop up. Could be at home. Could be at home. In front of the TV set. On the computer. All kinds of places Satan lurks with temptations for us. We need to be careful. And we need to always remember that our Lord is with us always. Here's our closing prayer for today. Lord, you know that I can make bad choices about where I choose to be. Please use this episode from the life of Peter to make me think more carefully about those choices and how social and physical context impact my ability to manage temptation. Not all people's temptations are the same, but we need to be aware in those places where we ourselves might be weak. We also need to be aware of those who are our friends, that we not ask them to go into places where they may be weak. And we need to be honest about those things with each other. Blessings to you today on this Wednesday.